Welcome back. This is part 4 and the final episode in this mini-series. In part 3 I was talking about the manifested universe, and how the manifested universe is, metaphorically speaking, that's a tough word, is or can be seen as one side of the coin. So in this episode I will talk about the unmanifested. I think I will just get going, and this guidance will take us deep into the unmanifested, and we will discover what is usually known as or called the cosmic consciousness, Christ consciousness, or Buddha nature. This guidance assumes that you are sitting inside a room. I'm going to make some visualizations that assumes that you are sitting inside a room. So, here we go. Your task is to listen and to just follow along. We are going on a journey together. It is a journey that does not take us anywhere, but at the same time it takes us out into infinity. And for that to be possible, we have to slow down. And we do that by me starting to speak slowly. I would like to ask you to initially that you are keeping your eyes open. And with your eyes open, start observing the room that you are sitting within. Look around. Notice what surrounds you. What are you surrounded by? Is it the furniture, the walls, the ceiling, or the floor? Is that what surrounds you? Would it be true to say that you are surrounded by the walls, the ceiling, and the floor? Would that be true to say that? What about that which is between you and the walls and the ceiling and the floor? Notice that which is between you and the walls and the ceiling and the floor. Notice that you cannot point to that. Where would you point? Notice that it is also almost impossible to describe it. The closest we can come to describe it would be a concept like space. Can you recognize that space? When you recognize that space, you also come to recognize that it is not the walls, the ceiling, or the floor that surrounds you, but that it is this space that surrounds you. And if you really pay attention, you can also recognize that in fact the walls, the ceiling, and the floor is in the same space that you are. expand your awareness and you will be recognizing that the walls and the ceiling and the floor actually does not constitute a boundary of the space that you are within. You can actually recognize that the walls and the ceiling and the floor is within the same space, and that the space continues on the other side. Let's see if we can find an end, a boundary to the space that you are sitting in. The boundary of the space that you are sitting in. Does the main building constitute this boundary? We have to say no. When we expand our awareness, we come to realize that the entire building is within the same space that you are sitting within. So where does the space we are sitting within, where does it end? Does the space that we are sitting within, does it end at the border of the country that we are within? Does the space end at the outside of the atmosphere of the earth? Does this space end at the outskirts of our galaxy? Does this space end somewhere in the universe? Can we find an end to this space that we are sitting within? Don't settle for a theoretical answer. Don't be satisfied with theories. This space that we are sitting within is the universe. This space is the unmanifested part of the universe. And that means that when you stretch your hand out, you stretch your hand out into the universe. This space that we have just recognized, this space is the formless. This space is the unmanifested. We cannot point to this space because the space is everywhere. And this space is infinite potential. And within this space, galaxies, stars, planets, and you arises. That is the play of forms. It is the formless that continuously brings itself into form. Again and again, it enters a new form. The old form dissolves, and a new form is born. This continuous cycle of the birth of new forms and the dissolving of old forms is sometimes also said like this. We therefore commit this body to the ground, earth to earth, ashes to ashes, dust to dust, in sure and certain hope of the resurrection to eternal life, coming into form, going out of form again, and into new form, eternal life. This space that we have just explored, we can, for the time being, call that the outer space. But there is also an inner space, and we must now explore that inner space in the same way. So now I would like you to close your eyes. Notice how the sound of my voice arises and disappears again. The sound of my voice arises inside what we could call your inner space. The sound of my voice is thus a form that arises in your formless inner space. Notice and pay special attention to the space of silence between each word I say. Some of these spaces of silence are long, and some of them are so short that they can hardly be registered. But there is always a space of silence between each word. If there were no space of silence, you wouldn't be able to understand what I was talking about. This space of silence are the inner space. This inner space we can also, as you have noticed, I'm sure, just call silence. Notice that sounds they come and go, but that the space in which they appear, that space is always there. It is a silent, timeless, observing, infinite inner space. This silent, observing space is who you are in your deepest essence. You have always known that there is an aspect of you that has never aged a single day since you were born into form. You may never have been able to quite pinpoint what this aspect were. But now I will tell you what it is. It is this quiet, observing space. We could also call it presence. This presence is a direct experience of being. Now, observe your thoughts. Discover that your own thoughts arises as forms in this formless inner space. Thoughts also come and go, but the space in which they arises, this silent space, is always there. I am the space where everything happens. You are the space in which everything happens. Now look for an end to this inner space. Can you find the place where your inner space ends and where mine begins? No, you cannot do that. This inner space is a quiet, infinite space of conscious, observing presence. It is a space of infinite potential. And there is nothing that can happen that can change this fact. Nothing can affect this space. Everything arises and dissolves inside this space. I and you are this space, and thus we are the context in which everything happens. I and you are thus not this explanation, but rather we are the space in which this explanation arises. I and you are this space in which everything comes and goes. This space is what we call cosmic consciousness. Welcome home. Now open your eyes. Look around. Now notice that everything you look at arises as an experience in the same inner space. Notice that the sound of my voice is an experience that arises in this inner space. You can also observe that any feeling that might arise is arising in the same inner space. Feelings, they come and go, but the space in which they arise, the space is always there. And you will come to understand, you will find that there is nothing that you can point at that does not arise in this inner space. You cannot and you will never be able to point at anything that does not arise in this inner space. Therefore, this so-called inner space is not something that is inside the body, because you can point to the body. And that means that the sensation of the body is something that arises inside this so-called inner space. We have thus realized, we have learned directly that it is not correct to call it an inner and an outer space, because there is only one space, and in that one space everything arises, and in that one space everything passes away. But the space is undisturbed. Therefore we can say space, not two, not dualistic, not one space and not two spaces, but ultimately just space. Consciousness. Cosmic consciousness. Christ consciousness. Buddha nature. Rest now. Rest as this consciousness, knowing that everything, every form that arises, it will go again. it will dissolve again. Remain at rest in this timeless and formless cosmic consciousness. I am. And you are loved. You are not only loved, you are love. Welcome home.